So, we're finally here. Young Justice's second season. It came with a lot of changes. A lot of things people didn't like, and for very understandable reasons. The second season of the show came with an entire 5-year time skip. A 5-year time skip that you could really only get caught up on if you played the shitty tie-in video game, which I may have loved as a kid, but going back and playing it once again to get myself refreshed on the time skip was not fun in the slightest. It was like a really boring rip-off version of Ultimate Alliance or X-Men Legends. And to make it even worse, you also had to read tie-in comics all to get caught up with the 5-year time skip. But I'll be the first to say it and be wholeheartedly honest with you all. I liked the time skip. I liked the idea of a lot of time passing between the first and second season, and as a matter of fact, the second season of the show is my favorite. But that does not mean that it isn't without its problems, and one of the big ones is Robin, aka Nightwing, as he made the transition sometime in the 5-year time period, something that we didn't get to see. Although I think the show does a fairly good job of filling in the gaps for you as it goes along in this shorter 20-episode season, I don't think they truly had enough time to flesh it out, and I don't think the 5-year time skip should have been relegated to tie-in comics and video games. Specifically, a video game that is notoriously hard to get your hands on nowadays, especially with the shutdown of like the Xbox 360 store, for example. It's a game that I was just lucky enough to still own. And trust me, the cutscenes aren't even really worth watching on YouTube. It was that bad of a game, unfortunately. And with that all out of the way and addressing the 5-year time skip, I want to go ahead and talk about Young Justice's version of Nightwing, and how Young Justice failed Nightwing, but in the best way possible.
But that thing inside of him, the thing that drives him to sacrifice everything for the sake of his mission, that's not me. I don't want to be the Batman anymore.
I don't want to be like Batman. Those are the defining words and arguably some of Robin's most popular words from this show. And it's a thing that Dick aspired to not be, but he became anyways. I think the whole narrative around season 2, and specifically why this is such a technically poor adaptation of Nightwing, is Nightwing ends up becoming the very things that he built this team to represent the antithesis of. He becomes just like Batman, somebody he had expressed not wanting to be like. And while he might not have that same dark thing driving him, the way in which he described in that quote, it is rather replaced with the same amount of lies, secrecy, and deception that caused the creation of the team in the first place. And he does all of this in full conscious effort, much to the difference in character that we were presented not only in the first season, but in a majority of adaptations of Nightwing. It's something that I think is paralleled extraordinarily well in the first few episodes. When we see Nightwing in the very first episode, we see that he has finally stepped into the leadership role he had wanted so badly in the first season, and then grew to not want. Instead, he is seemingly ready to hold said position, and is currently doing a pretty good job of it, considering he's been leading the team since around, like, give or take the last few months, as the video game Young Justice Legacy takes place during year 5. And in that game, I'm not even gonna drop a spoiler, this show's like a decade old at this point, Calder ends up losing the one woman that he loved so dearly, that being Tula, as she died on one of the missions. Blaming that death and the grief that he felt, and also finding out that his dad was Black Manta, he ended up joining the Lite and his father on the side of villainy, in which Nightwing would then step up and take full lead and command of the team. And it was during his time in charge that we tend to see a lot of the cracks and really strange decisions that he makes while being in a leadership position, one that he had coveted for so long. Another thing that we see quite a lot of throughout this early part of this first season is just how intertwined the team has become with the Justice League, specifically the older members of the team, such as Nightwing, such as like Batgirl, technically speaking, but McGann and Connor especially. We are also introduced to a whole host and cast of new characters. Almost each one of them will be getting their own video, so I'm not really going to touch on them too much unless it's really imperative to Nightwing in this one. Just be patient with me, you all. These videos take a while to make. Anyways, Nightwing himself is shown to not only hold a leadership position, but to also hold that sort of same position of power the Justice League held during the first season. It's very evident at the end of the very first episode when new members of the team end up finishing their first mission as Gamma. Teams are split up into Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, and ultimately end up blowing up an entire alien facility. And when we see the Justice League descend down, Nightwing is a part of them. Much like how the Justice League descended down onto the original 3 members of the team as we saw them during the end of the original 2-parter in season 1. I think it is wonderful and great symbolism to show how Dick Grayson is far more like the Justice League and far more like his mentor than he ever would have wanted to imagine himself being back when he was 13. At this point, Dick is like, what? 17? He's only still like 17, right? Because it's only been like 5 years. Yeah, he's only 17. That's actually kind of wicked. You see, man, I'm thinking he's my age, but now considering he's 17, maybe I'm a little too harsh on him. But either way, he is presented as basically being what the Justice League was just a few years ago. And his role in this almost league member status, despite not actually being a member of the league, as some of the old members of the team have graduated to being, such as Zatanna, he actively chose not to, but that's just so he could continue to work with the league and obviously the team in a more covert setting, of which we see heavily as a majority of the Justice League will be off-world, trying to clear their name in space, you know, due to the whole fact that Vandal Savage took control of them for like 12 or 18 hours and absolutely had them cause havoc, and also expose the fact that Earth has a quote-unquote meta gene that is ripe for exploitation for different alien species, hence all of the alien species on the planet and the invasion subplot. Wow, this is a lot of just trying to get this video set up. I hope I'm not taking too long. And while the Justice League is off-world, of course, Nightwing steps into this role more fully. And one thing you'll notice very quickly is the quips, the whelmed, the, trot, all of the quips and mannerisms and vocabulary that Nightwing had come to use in just about every single episode no longer exists in his vocabulary. He rarely says those things. It is though the fun of being a superhero has been completely drained away from him and his identity on the team. He does not view this as a game anymore. I think there was a big emphasis in the first season on putting it out there that this life has consequences, and the second season builds on that extremely well. Nightwing has become far more hardened by the things he has seen over the last 5 years, especially with the death of Tula and the quote-unquote turning of his friend Aqualad. All of these things have compounded into a Dick Grayson that is less fun, less jokey, and far more serious, especially when it comes to being the leader of the team. But that does not mean he isn't without his Dick Grayson-isms. We get hints to the fact that this dude has low-key been a dog and has gotten around a lot throughout the team, whether it was Zatanna, Rocket, and a handful of others, currently Barbara Gordon. As well, he still has moments where he is just as soft and lovable as he was in the first season when interacting with his team, even if for the most part he is fairly stoic and harsh, especially on the new members, not allowing them the same level of leeway that he tended to have for him and the team when they were younger. But that doesn't stop him from still being kind on an occasion. It's not like he's unkind a lot of the time, it's just he's far more stern.
New questions keep the investigation moving forward. You saved lives, and you got each other home safe. It's a successful mission in my book.
Is this thing working? Alright, bet. So Nightwing himself has really changed in ways that are some for the better and mostly for the worse. I'm gonna keep it real with each and every one of you. For example, the way in which he goes about handling issues such as Impulse. Impulse was one of my favorite new characters from this second season. I thought bringing him in was like this really novel concept, especially considering he was technically an original member of Young Justice back in the day. So I thought this was like extraordinarily cool. But you see, the way in which he decided to handle Impulse is really where the problem comes in. After the death of Tula and really having to learn just how real the life is for being a superhero, Wally decided to retire. Him and Artemis are completely off the books when it comes to being superheroes, right? So when Nightwing decides that this Impulse situation is out of his depth and out of his control, he calls up Wally. He asks Wally to come out of retirement and risk himself and his future that he is desperately trying to build with Artemis outside of the life, and asks him to come back, which is a problem, clearly. And not only does he successfully get Wally to come back to the life, but he also gets Artemis to come back. Now granted, Wally only comes back for one day, and Artemis does come on full time, and at the end of the day, that is a choice that that character had to make on their own. But at the same time, he's the one coercing them and asking them to make this decision, to go against the thing that they are actively trying to build, and to once again put themselves in harm's way for his own personal gain when it comes to being leader of the team. And these lies tend to continue. Like, for example, he's having Miss Martian and Superboy pretend to be John Jones and Superman, trying to convince the public that the team, as in the Justice League, still exists and is out there protecting everybody. I think that's a better lie, to be honest, but this next one is genuinely egregious. So I've spoken a little bit on how Calder is on the dark side now, how he's a bad guy. That's not actually true. As a matter of fact, he's playing double agent for Nightwing, something a majority of the team has no idea about, and some members of the Justice League don't even know. And that's exactly what's going on. And he needed somebody to sacrifice so that Calder looked better in the eyes of the light and looked more trustworthy. And he chose that person to be Artemis. He sent Artemis into deep cover and decided that would be the best option, to send one of his closest friends again into deep cover behind enemy lines. This decision that ultimately continues to dig Nightwing a deeper hole when it comes to his credibility and his, space within the team. For reference, he quite literally made the team, him, Calder, and Kid Flash, because they were sick of being lied to, sick of being treated like sidekicks, and sick of being kept out of the loop. And he does the exact thing the team was built to combat. He is lying. He is doing things that are shady. He is treating the rest of the team as though they are not smart enough to know, treating the Justice League as though they are not smart enough to know either. This goes against just about every single thing he said he was building this team on foundationally. This also goes against the idea of him not wanting to be Batman. Because for him to be Batman, he would have to be willing to do anything to fulfill his mission. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. He's willing to put two of his closest friends in severe danger in order to accomplish his mission. He might not have the same dark thing driving him, but he has the exact same thing driving him that is ultimately going to put multiple people at risk.
I'm not blaming you. I know you've been forced to make impossible decisions, like choosing between saving the Krolatans on Melina Island
or saving my friends.
It's really the lack of care that Nightwing seems to have when he's putting his friends this deep into harm's way. He treats it as though it's all routine and normal, something that I find very interesting because for a lot of them, it's really not. He might have signed up for this risk at 13 and he might be used to it. And sure, they're a little more weathered at this point, a little more tempered, and a little bit more used to it now. But it's still extreme danger to be putting your 18-year-old, 17-year-old friends into just because you believe they are more capable than others, or because you believe that this plan needs to happen in order for you to be able to defeat the light eventually. I think it's a little bit ridiculous, but at the same time, I think that's the point. I think the entire point of this season of Nightwing was to show he became the very thing that he swore he wouldn't, that he didn't want to be. And I think that's beautiful writing, even if it means technically character assassinating Nightwing. And that's something we'll see a lot throughout the rest of this season, is consequences. The consequences to this action and to the actions taken off screen by him.
They're in.
Who are you kidding? It only gets more dangerous from here.
Now, you see, what he really failed to consider was the fallout that comes with this. I mean, just think about it. Artemis's mother does not know that Artemis is still alive. She believes that Artemis is dead. Wally has to pretend to what would be his mother-in-law, not too soon going, that her daughter is dead. Imagine the psychological harm that causes on a person, on a mother who has already lost one of her daughters to the same life of crime that she lost so many years to. Now think about Jade, think about her father's Sportsmaster. Less about Sportsmaster because he's a douche, but more about Jade, who genuinely seems to care about her little sister, even if it's not always shown very well. As well, what are the ramifications this has on the team? Think about it. Raquel is trying to have a baby. That'd be Rocket. If you remember from the first season, she wasn't in a whole lot of it. She's trying to have a kid. How is she supposed to celebrate her baby shower when one of her closest friends just got killed? It's the way in which he didn't think about the other people who would be affected by this if he didn't tell them.
What am I doing? Having a shower. How can we celebrate so soon after?
Because Artemis would want us to celebrate. She'd kick our butts if we didn't.
It's the lack of forethought for me, for characters such as Gar, for example, who's only like 12, who views the team as the only family he has left because his mother has passed away. He has nothing else. So to him, this team means everything. Artemis was like an older sister to him. And again, the Nightwing I would read in the comics, the Nightwing I grew up loving, as he used to be one of my favorite superheroes, wouldn't have been in favor of doing something like this. He wouldn't be so harsh on his younger teammates when they bring a piece of technology he had planned for them to bring into the cave. All of these things and the way in which he acts are far more reminiscent of Batman than of Nightwing at all. And that's on purpose, at least I believe, because it makes for great thematic theming. Gosh, I'm so terrible with words. But it makes for like a really good narrative, even if it means tearing down this character a little bit. And it gets even worse when Calder raids the cave and ultimately destroys it, not just temporarily, but blows up the cave that I, as an audience member, came to love. I loved that cave, bro. It was so big on the aesthetic of the show that to destroy it and to get rid of it is such a huge leap. And that cave was also home for a majority of the members. It was home to them. It was home to Connor, somebody who doesn't actually have a home. It was home to McGann, somebody who moved to Earth and the first thing she did was hop on that team. Did I really just ignore that I worded it like that, but you know what I mean. And also it was home to people like Garfield who don't have parents anymore. He put the entire team at risk just so Calder could pass on some information on Lagoon Boy, who got captured, which was partially his own fault. Ended up getting more of his own team members caught up and captured, along with taking away their home, along with losing all the souvenirs, but like that's a bit less, but still that's pretty sad. And along with already sending 2 of his own team members under deep cover, he's so deep into the shit at this point, he doesn't see a way out. And he's always trying to justify. And that's where we come to one of my favorite scenes of this second season, and that's an argument between him and Wally, and how he tries to justify what he is doing constantly when Wally is throwing it in his face blatantly. This ain't something you would do. And this is also just a horrible thing that you've done. Little powwow that Nightwing is really called out by Wally. And I think it's a great segment and a great scene. It's pointing out to him that he didn't think about how these things would affect them. He didn't even think about how this would affect Calder, because he thinks Calder is so solid, he's so stoic, just like he was in all of season 1. But the dude just lost the love of his life. The dude just found out his dad is Black Manta, and now he has to deal with all of these things. Did Dick even consider that Calder could be thinking about going to the dark side? That he could have possibly put the lives of his friends and the people he holds dearest to him in the hands of a man that may or may not be compromised? Now, we all know Aqualad's solid, so he's not really compromised, but these are good points to be brought up. To bring up the fact that he lets all of this trauma and things go. Well, he compartmentalize this, and he can keep it all inside. That's not how his friends work. He is not seeing them as people, he is seeing them as soldiers. He sees the cave as not a place where these people needed to live, but just a sacrificable tool.
The cave was just a place worth sacrificing if it helps us stop the invasion. Look, I'm sorry you lost all your souvenirs.
Are you serious? I don't care about that junk. I'm worried about Artemis, terrified for her. You put her right into his hands.
And even after all of this, Nightwing is still so set in his way in the idea that this is what's needed for the mission and this is what's good, that he doesn't even take Kid Flash's advice to heart. He doesn't even bother. As a matter of fact, he does end up at least somewhat successfully sending his team out on a mission to recover the missing members, but in the process, because he has lied, because he has not been forthcoming with information, and because McGann is dealing with her own things and is going on a little bit of a mental break herself, she ends up completely shattering Calder's mind. She mind breaks him completely, with no way of knowing if or how she could fix him or anybody else could fix him. And she does this because she believes that he killed what is essentially her sister and betrayed what was their family, what was her found family, one that accepted her for what she truly looked like. And in the process, she completely mind broke Calder. And in doing so, she finally discovered that Calder was working undercover, that he had no intentions of being a bad guy, that he had no intentions of doing the things that he did. And ultimately, that's what led her to feeling horrible. And could have also potentially led to Calder being permanently mind broken in a vegetative state for the rest of his life because he chose to go undercover under Nightwing's assertion. Because Nightwing doesn't want to play nice with information, the entire team views him as this horrible traitor. Lagoon Boy, who we met all the way back in season 1, has joined the team now, and he looked up to Calder. He thought Calder was the shit. He trusted him with everything, and his hero turned out to be a villain. So Calder wants to rip him limb from... Not Calder, Lagoon Boy wants to rip him limb from limb. I'm making a lot of mistakes today. This is pretty uncharacteristic of me. I apologize. Regardless, everything is made exponentially worse when a majority of the team that once lived in this nice cave which was built for them to genuinely live in, now have to bunk in Nightwing's secret bunker in Bloodhaven, and it's really not a great spot.
This is just a place to crash. A very temporary stopgap place to crash for those of you who are actually living at the cave.
Also, because I haven't said it yet, basically Connor and McGann's entire friend group know all their friends are superheroes. So Mal ends up actually deciding to work with the team and has a relationship with Bumblebee. And just shout out Mal, because to me, he's this show's Rand. If you know, you know. But once again, this is not a very good situation for these people to be in. I mean, McGann doesn't even get her own room. All she gets is a privacy screen, and it's just not working out very well. And I think the worst part about it all is that Nightwing tries to sell this as though it's normal, as though it's okay, as though he isn't the reason that these people no longer have a home. He just pretends it's fine. Now would be a great time to come clean. McGann has finally abandoned what was the cave and what was her home, and instead has had to move out into her own apartment. Really, she's taken John's apartment, but you know what I mean. It's just a horrible situation all around, and I don't think it's something that Nightwing would do. Not in the slightest. At least just about any other version or interpretation of the character. But again, I think that's what makes this version so special, and not necessarily likable, but an enjoyable arc to watch throughout the season. hopefully you all can't hear my fan in the background, but it's really hot and I really need to finish this recording. So anyways, basically Calder is still brain dead, the team still doesn't have a place to live, and McGann's confidence in herself is completely shattered. Something that will come to bite the team in the ass pretty hard, considering they've just discovered another scarab user outside of Blue Beetle in Green Beetle. That's just what I'm gonna call him, because it makes it easy for me. A Martian with a scarab. And all McGann had to do was to look into his mind and ensure that he is telling the truth and that he isn't a bad guy. But she can't actually do that. She can't look into his mind properly because she's too afraid she will hurt another person. And part of that, again, personal responsibility on McGann, but also part of it is the situation she was put in by Nightwing, because Nightwing didn't want to share. It's again another failing in his leadership, another failing in his character. And to make it all worse, Artemis has to risk her position in the light, risk getting exposed, risk getting herself and Calder in trouble so they can take out Simon, because Simon was going to repair Calder's mind, and if Simon does so, he knows they're all, you know, colluding, which is a bad thing. So now McGann has to get captured. Again, another part of Nightwing's team being put in unnecessary danger because he doesn't want to share. And when he finally does decide to share, it's because McGann is in the hospital. It's because his tower of cards has finally folded in on itself, and people are starting to find out that he did not initially include in the secret. And it's through this that he finally decides to open up and to talk about the things he has decided to do in keeping this gigantic secret. Something that Lagoon Boy isn't exactly too fond of, and I don't blame him in the slightest. And it's not just Lagoon Boy, but Connor, what in my opinion is a founding member of the team, and somebody who should be kept in the loop on all of these things. He's a senior member and somebody that always has Nightwing's back, always.
You should have told me!
No. Nightwing's our leader. We put our trust in him. I'm sure he didn't keep this from us, from all of us, without having his reasons.
And even while pissed, he still has Nightwing's back, because to him, this is like the ultimate betrayal. This is your best friend not telling you crucial information that could get your ex killed that you still low-key in love with, and also get you killed and potentially your friends, your family killed. This was extraordinarily hard for Connor, and it just goes to show his growth that he held his cool during this moment.
So Manta may just kill her and kill Tigress if she blows her cover trying to save her. And we'll have lost all three of them because you thought it was a bad idea to share.
It's also one of the few times we actually see him be just about as angry as he was a majority of the time in the first season, so that was kind of cool. Another thing that really gets me with Dick, especially in this season, is the constant hypocrisy. He's very much a do as I say, not as I do kind of character, much like his mentor Batman. Batman always wanted Robin to be better. He always wanted Nightwing to be better than he ever was, but he never modeled that for them. Instead, he would tell them how to be better, but he never really showed them, not a lot of the time. And we can really see that influence rubbed off on Dick specifically in the way in which he tries to teach up the young people on the team. It's a lot of do as I say, not as I do. And I don't think that works really well with the kind of team he's trying to cultivate. It clearly didn't work with him, because despite Batman's best efforts and despite how he wanted to be perceived, he still ended up being just like his mentor. And I think what really irks me the most about this is just the ease in which he is forgiven, not only by his own team, but the ease in which he's forgiven by the people that it affected most, the people that it hurt the most. The ease in which Wally was able to forgive him, the ease in which McGann was able to forgive him for lying about these things, for putting the team in these dangerous positions, for just the way in which he was able to get away with almost killing one of his best friends by making him a literal vegetable. Okay, saying he made him an almost vegetable is a little bit of hyperbole, right? But at the same time, some of the responsibility does ultimately land on Dick, unfortunately. And what drives me even slightly crazier is that it's just so casual with how he's forgiven. Though then again, with Dick Grayson, I mean, can you really stay mad at a guy like him? I mean, come on now. But like, being serious, it was a little bit disappointing. It doesn't feel like he understands the full weight of the consequences, at least right now, that is. I mean, even in his apology to McGann, where he does at least own up and, you know, make sure it's known that he knows that he messed up, it's not fully there, if that makes sense, especially with a scene that comes a little bit later. But I do need to mention real quick that, like, the entire team just got backdoored by Blue Beetle and betrayed because he's low-key being controlled by the Reach, who have come to Earth, who control the Scarabs and are looking to harvest all of the meta people for their own intergalactic slave trade and to make money off of them. But that is completely besides the point, other than bringing it up right now so that I can tie in with the fact that the team has been kidnapped and they need to be saved. That's it. That's the only reason I brought that up. And that's the whole reason that he feels bad, because McGann, who could have been with the team and definitely probably could have taken down Blue Beetle using mind control, was off trying to fix Calder's mind at the time this was happening. So he feels some personal responsibility for that. That's how we actually end up getting the apology. And as well, we also get some cool scenes of Arsenal, somebody who I haven't mentioned, which is the actual Roy Harper, who's alive. Again, it's not his video, so I haven't really mentioned it until it needed to be mentioned, like, right now.
All on me.
Except you never would have been in that position if I had trusted you with the secret of Aqualad's deep cover mission. I put you, Aqualad, Artemis, the whole team in unacceptable danger.
But you see, like, that's not the only thing. Also, the hypocrisy of which he handles other situations in the show, something I don't think the real Nightwing would do. He tries to really steer clear of being at least this hypocritical outside of his relationships with women. Because, listen, when it comes to the writers in Nightwing's love life, I genuinely think they handled him being a dog a little bit better in this show than especially in the comic books. I mean, sleeping with Barbara and then giving her the invitation to your wedding with Starfire has got to be like one of the top 10 dick moves in comic books ever. But I'm getting a little off track. Anyways, Nightwing has pretty much reacted to a lot of situations with harsh criticism. Again, like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to the way in which Batman handled a lot of situations, when it came with do as I say, not as I do, he does the exact same thing, specifically with Arsenal. You see, Arsenal, because he doesn't want to be captured again and held hostage for even more time, he ended up popping an airlock to save himself, but in the process dooming the team and getting them captured on War World. What is wrong with me tonight? Getting him captured on War World and ultimately in a ton of trouble. Now, at the end of the day, Arsenal is a major reason as to why the team gets out and escapes, but at the same time, he's partly to blame for why they're in that situation. So while he fixed his problem and mistake, he is partially to blame for creating it in the first place, much like Nightwing. Now, Nightwing didn't exactly directly sacrifice the team for his own personal gain, but he kind of did in almost a metaphorical sense. Again, he put the mission above his team, he put the mission above his friends' lives, he put the mission above a lot of things. And you could say that's noble. For Arsenal, it wasn't the mission that he put above, but rather himself and his own selfish interests. But there is definitely a parallel to be drawn between those two situations. But the reprimand from Nightwing and the reprimand from Arsenal is completely different. Nightwing basically gets a slap on the wrist, and Arsenal gets full-on kicked off the team and demoted and treated as though he is horrible. And honestly, low-key, I think Arsenal deserved it, right? I'll get to that in his own video. But at that same point, I think the punishment for Dick should have been far more severe. There's a Dick joke in there somewhere, but I'm not gonna make that, right? Right?
But this isn't the first time he's pulled this kind of stunt, intentionally endangering the lives of teammates in order to further his own agenda or guard against his own personal demons. It's unacceptable. So until you prove yourself a team player, you have no place on this team.
Once again, my problem is with enforcement. It's with the hypocrisy that Nightwing doesn't get treated nearly as bad for this as Arsenal does, when in my opinion, I find Arsenal's motivation to be far more understandable than Dick's, to be wholeheartedly honest with each and every one of you. And while you can make the argument that Dick needed this to be a secret so that somebody like Simon in the light can't figure it out, I think there are ways around it, ways that did not involve putting his own team members and family at risk. And once again, I just am not the biggest fan of the harsh punishment that Arsenal received and the more or less slap on the wrist that Dick received right now anyways. Slap on the wrist for now. You'll see. Or if you've already seen the show, then you know what point I'm getting to. You see, despite the scheming, despite putting his friends at risk, despite being the exact same thing that he tried so hard not to be, Dick Grayson ended up winning out. Like, he was successful in not only infiltrating the light, but stifling their plan, at least one of their plans, that was currently going on. He was wildly successful in doing so. And as a matter of fact, he quite literally got one of those ends justify the means type of deals. And that's something that I think kind of frustrated me a little bit, was like, it all worked out in the end for him. And I get that I hold Young Justice to a very high standard. It is, in my opinion, the best kids adaptation of a superhero group. And I'm saying I put it over X-Men Evolution. I put it over X-Men, not X-Men 97, but that's not a kid show anymore. I put it over X-Men. I put it over X-Men Evo. Like, for me, this is the magnum opus. And personally, to see how light, like low-key light, Nightwing got off kind of bugged me, because it all seemed to work out for him. At least that was until we get near the end of this two-part finale. You see, well, the first part of the two-part finale is genuinely heartwarming and happy. The good guys win. Calder's nowhere near close to being a bad guy. The Reach are stifled. The metahuman trade that they were going to try and enact doesn't exist anymore. Kid Flash is back in his suit. Artemis is back to being Artemis. McGann has her happiness back. Her want to be a hero. She's not afraid to use her powers right now anymore. All of these things have gone well. Batgirl is still like Batgirl and not Oracle, so that's also a really great thing. War World has been taken down. Like, all of these wonderful things have come to fruition.
I'm still just so glad you're alive, and that Aqualad's not a traitor. No more faking anyone's death for at least a year, okay?
But unfortunately, even within beating the light and taking them down and having a great success there, the Reach had a backup plan, and that was to nuke Earth to the ground, like completely destroy Earth using terrible weather patterns. And unfortunately, that entire situation would have been the end of the world. You know, other than like the Reach and the Light teaming up to end the world, because that definitely would have been worse. But in order to save the world, somebody is going to have to pay a price, and that price ultimately would be the life of one of everybody's favorite characters in the show. Kid Flash had been integral to this show for its entire run. He's the comic relief. He's the wisecracking yet big-hearted guy on the team. I love him. I love Kid Flash was who I started talking about Young Justice with, because I love the character so much. And in my opinion, it is partly to blame on Nightwing's shoulders as to why Kid Flash has to die, and why he does. He pulled Kid Flash back into this life, and again, personal responsibility. Kid Flash chose to put the suit back on. He chose to go run. And it's not entirely fair to put it all on Nightwing's shoulders, but putting some of the blame there, I feel, is warranted, because he is the one who roped not only him, but Artemis back into the life, got them to go out and do these things once again. And it genuinely led to what was one of the most devastating deaths in fiction for me as a child was to see Wally West go, because he was, by and large, he was my favorite member from season 1, because Blue Beetle quickly took his spot because Jaime is Jaime, but he is my favorite of the OG cast members by a mile. And to see him have to go was arguably one of the most devastating things possible. I can only imagine the weight that would put on Nightwing's shoulders. And I think this really is, unfortunately, his punishment. It's his punishment for being the way he was and for not being Nightwing, but ultimately choosing to be Batman Lite. And unfortunately, that's just what it is what it is, right? And I think that Nightwing shouldn't have been team leader going forward after all of this. And I do think he probably decided that somewhere around War World, where he had rescued his team. He probably decided that somewhere around there. But after the death of Wally, I think that really cemented his need to step away from the team. But I don't love the way in which he does it. The way in which he chooses to step away from the team is not the best. Roll the clip.
No time for you to resign.
I'm not resigning, just taking a leave of absence. Besides, if you need help, Barbara's more than ready to step up.
Agreed, but Dick...
I need a break, Calder. You, me, Wally, we founded this team. Without him...
He basically dumps the team right back into Calder's lap, as though Wally's death does not affect Calder, as though Calder having to be undercover these last few months hasn't severely affected him. Him having to fight and put away his own father, the loss of Tula. Nightwing selfishly puts his best friend back in charge of the team without giving him some time to breathe, because Nightwing needs that time to breathe. At least that's what he says. And while I don't think he should have been leader, I don't think dumping it in Calder's lap was the right decision either. To me, it feels selfish, unfortunately. And as I have probably titled the video, and as I've stated multiple times, Young Justice failed Nightwing. By and large, character assassination. This isn't Nightwing. And I think that's what makes it work the best for me. And I think it's what made for a really compelling and enjoyable season. And I genuinely enjoyed this, despite the fact that I don't think this is Nightwing. I love the narrative idea of taking a character who fears becoming just like his mentor and being the thing that he does not want to be and becoming it, and having to live with the consequences of being that person. I truly enjoyed that. And of course, I'm a little biased because the second season is my favorite. It gave me characters like Gar. It gave me characters like Tim. It gave me characters like Batgirl, and it gave me Jaime. I am going to always be partial to this season. And I wanted to start it off by really getting rid of the only true negative I had right out of the door, because I want to go on singing this season's praise, enjoying it, and getting to talk about the things that I love. So thank you all for watching this video, especially if you've made it all the way to the end. It's like 40 something minutes right now. Thank you all so much. Okay, time for my whole YouTuber thing. If you liked the video, please leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot. If you dislike the video, that's totally fine. Leave a dislike, and then let me know in the comments down below how I can be a better creator for you, what I should change. Constructive criticism helps me to be better at my job and to better entertain you all. As well, you know, if you want to sub, it's free. You can always unsubscribe later. And finally, without further ado, I do have a Patreon, and for $1 a month, you can join, see the videos early, see the videos without all the stuff I have to change for copyright. As well, you can see these videos and interact with me better throughout the channel Discord. And finally, gosh, I'm getting worse at these, aren't I? You can, if you're in like my $5 or above tier, you get shouted out at the end of each and every one of these videos. So shout out Demetrius Youngblood, shout out Metal Monk, shout out West Belladonna, shout out Oscar, shout out McGann, Shout out eSibert13. Shout out Gabriel Lafonte, Transgears1, Video Gamer 75, Golden Boy 420, Dakota Ross, and Donovan Gomez, and my boy MC Bomb 27. You all take care. Hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day.